guys, Ken here, your Thrifty Apprentice, and welcome back to another Mixed Media Art Journal Sunday. I am so excited. If you do not know, Mixed Media Art Journal Sunday is where we take a quote and we art journal with it, and it typically is uploaded on Sundays. And the quotes are normally very positive and inspirational, so I do release these videos on Sundays typically. So we're going to be using our Kent Scent Artist Series mixed media pad that I picked up a few days or a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago now, somewhere in that area. And to be honest, I was so excited I did go ahead and break this book open and do a journal page in it, which I will show you guys in just a moment. But first, let's take a look at the quote we're going to be using. I found this quote at mycupofcocoa.com. It's mycupofcocoa.com. And the quote says, "Live life in full bloom." And I loved it. You guys know I'm a flower freak. So live life in full bloom is going to be the inspirational quote that we paint from today. And I thought that this would be wonderful for it since I had already, kind of sketched it out, in advance a little bit. We're going to do a little bit bigger. Show you guys real quick the first art journal page that I did. The quote said, "In order to fly, you must give up the things weighing you down." And the very first thing that popped in my head when I saw that quote was a dragonfly, and that is what I painted. Okay, to start off, I am flipping my paper upside down, and that's something that I will normally do when I'm trying to draw something symmetrical. Although I still didn't do the greatest job, it does help out. So I am just using some watercolor pencils here in order to sketch on my composition, and I'm also going to be using those to put down the very first layer of color. And these are Faber-Castell Classic 24 grip eco pencils. They are a very affordable and economical watercolor pencil with a very high pigment payoff. I really like them. As a matter of fact, all of the products that we're going to be using in this video are very cheap and economical. I'm continuing my painting track to use what I have at the house without really purchasing anything new while we are still practicing stay at home and trying to be as frugal as possible. So I'm going to try to link all of the products that I use in this video in the description so that you guys can source them if you want them. But I do encourage you to use what you already have at home because anything will work. All of the products in this are really cheap. So I'm just using those watercolor pencils to sketch in my composition. You'll see that I use the blue and the pink to go ahead and put in the flowers. And then I'm using green to paint in the leaves and blues to do the water and the water line. We put shadow in. Now I'm just using a water brush to go ahead and disperse the pigment and push it around. I'm using the first layer, and while it's still wet, I'm actually going to take the watercolor pencils and go back in and just hit and miss around the bunch of flowers. Not doing every single one because I don't want to overdo it. I just want to give enough so that the brain will do the rest when you look at it. Now, I wasn't going for realism with this. The whole idea was to go for something really sketchy. This is my art journal Sunday painting. So, what I had in mind when I started was to kind of do one of those illustrations that you would see a quote attached to. So, that's kind of what I'm going for. So here I'm just taking color directly from the lead of that pencil in order to go and start adding shadow into that bunch of flowers, just because I kind of wanted them to stand out a little bit so you can see what they were. And I also wanted to give the feel that there was some density to that bunch of flowers, like there were more back off in the background in there. So here for each leaf, what you're going to see me do is use a water brush to push that pigment around. Then I'm going to pull color directly from the lid of the pencil in order to darken or deepen the color. When we sketched on those leaves, you'll notice we went directly over the vase that we had drew on. And that's because I knew I would be layering and I wasn't really worried about that blue showing through those leaves by the time it was all said and done. So now I'm using a water brush to go ahead and kind of push the pigment around on the vase itself and the water. This is where the shadow line would be, where you would see that the water would get a little bit deeper, or you would start to see the blue tint if you were looking at a vase sitting on a table. And now we're going to do the same thing for the pink that we did for the blue. And actually, that pink was not as strong as the blue. It didn't stain as much. So I lost more definition when I went in and pushed that pigment around on the pink. I mean, that actually didn't happen on the blue, but we're still going to use the same technique, use that watercolor pencil to go in and hit and miss and add detail in, and then take color directly from the pencil lid itself in order to start adding in some shadow and some density to that bunch of flowers. And don't worry, by the time we're done with this, we're going to have all the detail we need for you to tell exactly what it is. And I'm just going to work on the shadow. And then you'll notice I waited to this point to go ahead and put in the stem. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to have my water mostly done. Whenever you're looking at a vase of flowers, wherever the stem actually intersects the water, below that water line, you'll notice that there's a distortion and the stem appears to be a bit bigger than it does above the water line. So that is what I wanted to try to emulate here. And I'm just going in with different shades of green and pushing those pigments around in order to paint in the stem. Now we let that layer dry, and here I'm going to move on to the second layer, and I'm using Faber-Castell watercolor pencils. This is from the same, watercolor crayons. This is from the same classic line. This palette, I actually, when it was clean, I took some sandpaper and kind of scuffed it up. It makes those scuff marks make it really easy to grab pigment from like pencils and crayons and just stick paints. So it's great for stuff like this. So I used as many colors as I could that were close to the watercolor pencils that I used. And now you'll see that I am actually turning those crayons into a watercolor paint by adding water to those pigments. And then I'm working on the leaves first. I'm using the lighter green as a mid-tone, and then I'm going in with a darker green for my shadows. And then I'm using a scraper. This is just a card to draw in some vein lines and details for each of the leaves. And I picked that technique up from Lindsay, the Frugal Crafter. Shout out to Lindsay. It's a great idea for adding details. And you do it while the paint is still wet so that it'll look really nice. I really like that technique. So we're going to just go in and use the two shades of blue to enhance the water and the vase that the flowers are in. We're going to work with that blue color on the main flower itself. We're going to use the darker blue to enhance the shadows. We're going to do the same thing with the pink color. Now, actually, the color that was with the crayon is more of a fuchsia, where the color with the pencils was more of a pink, but they still worked really well together. And that's what I love about all of these different products and these different art supplies, is that you can really use them together to enhance one another. I mean, there is no rule that says you have to stick to one thing. Go ahead and use whatever you need to use in order to make your painting, your composition, whatever it is you're working on, look the way you want it to look, or as close to the way that you want it to look. So now you're going to see that I take this yellow and I'm going to go in and add it into the leaves. The colors were a little bit too dark for me. I did like what was there, but I kind of wanted to pull in those highlights, pull them back. So I'm just going to glaze a layer of yellow on top of the leaves and the stems in order to start to pull some of those highlights back. And now I'm going to go in and work on the flower itself. Again, this one the opposite, adding in the lighter, I'm sorry, the mid-tones as well as enhancing the darks. And yeah, so then you'll see here that I use even darker tones around the shadows for that blue. I wanted you to see that one of those flowers was on top of the other. So now I'm just going to work in the water, and throughout the rest of this video you will see that I'm actually adding different light washes of color to the water, and that's because when you look at water it would be reflecting the colors of the objects around it. So that's what I wanted to do. And after the second layer, which was the crayon layer, dried, I moved on to the third layer here where I'm using Crayola erasable colored pencils. This is a 24 pack that I picked up from Michael's, I think it was. Again, another very cheap and economical pencil. It is not, again, the most light fast, and it's definitely not professional. And it's not even the best colored pencil in the world, but I have some on my desk, so I grab them whenever I want to enhance a painting, especially if it's in a sketchbook. They work really well for that. The lid is pretty hard compared to other colored pencils that I like to use, but it worked well for what I was doing here. And I'm just going to use it to go in and hit and miss with both the blue and the pink, adding definition into the flowers and the little leaves that would be in those flowers back there. I really like the way that it was turning out. It was really going in the direction that I originally saw in my head when I started this, just kind of playing off of that little painting that I did in the little travel journal that I showed you guys in the beginning of the video. Same old, just enhancing the colors using the blues, and gonna be using those colored pencils to add in reflections in the water as well. And at this point I brought in a purple. Now, I normally don't introduce a new color in at this particular stage, but I used it to bring out the color in the wording on the front of the vase. So I was going to definitely have to add it in other places. So you'll see me add it into the shadow colors of the blue. You're going to see me use it to enhance the shadow colors of the green. I'm going to add it in as many places as I possibly can since I introduced it into the composition at this point. But yeah, color pencils just going down everywhere. And I think you guys really get the point here. It's just really working on it. I don't think that it was taking as much color as I wanted to, because uh, it was so much on the paper at this point, but it was giving me just enough color from those pencils to really enhance what was going on. I really did like it. And I must say, I actually like this paper a lot too. This is the second page that I've used, and it handles really well. It handles water really well. It handles the layering really well. It doesn't really scar or scratch up like the XL version does. So I really do like this artist series of Canson. So now I'm going to bring in a Jane Davenport Mermaid marker and just go over that wording so that it stands out even more. And then I'm going to actually take that same marker to write in my quote. And we are writing in live life in full bloom. Now, I am not the best brush letter writer, calligrapher, whatever you want to call it in the world at all. I just, do the very best that I can. So I wanted to try to keep this as neat as possible. And guys, if my voice sounds shaky, I'm sorry. I just realized I was bouncing my foot as I was doing this voiceover. So yeah, if it was a shake in my voice, that's why. So I'm just going to go ahead and get this quote written in as neatly as I can. And then at the very end, after the word bloom, you'll see I'll add some little squiggly lines and a little heart. In order to do the background, I am going to take all of the colors that we used in the composition, and we are going to splatter it all around the paper. Now, the great thing is that the color pencil that you use on the composition kind of makes a wax barrier, so it's easy to lift those splatters off of the flowers as well as the leaves. And then I'm going to actually do something a little silly. I'm going to introduce a new color. I'm going to grab a fuchsia mermaid marker and I'm going to use it to underline the quote. But once I did it, there was no going back and I had to use it in more than one place. So I'm going to actually take it and put it out on my palette and splatter it all around the composition as well, and it's just going to help blend it into the background. Well guys, if you like what you saw, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe so you can keep up with what's going on. Guys, don't forget to share the video and comment. Again, share, it helps us grow, and as I tell you always, just keep painting.